I love talking with passionate business owners. Their enthusiasm is irresistible, their knowledge is invaluable, and their wisdom holds the keys to transforming your passion into a successful business. As a marketing strategist, I help people around the world innovate and grow their business. I'm Jay Hamilton Roth, and this is Business with Passion. Ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, the show is about to begin. Are the words you might hear before today's guest performances of a marionette company and a clowning instructor. The Fratello Marionettes have been showcasing their intricate handcrafted marionettes around the world since 1989. Kevin Menegus and Fred C. Riley III were each trained by world-class puppeteers and loved performing for audiences.
I started doing puppet shows when I was 6 years old. My parents gave me a little toy puppet to start off with, and it was a little Pelham puppet from England, a little handmade puppet, and my father built me a little stage. And so I could practice in the winters. You know, I grew up in Michigan, so it was cold in the winter, so I always had time to build little shows for my friends and my neighbors, and we did productions just with little toy puppets. And then when I got a little bit older, I got lots of books from the library on how to make puppets, and actually started making my own puppets, and then got involved in the Puppetry Guild when I moved here to California. And there's a big community of artists who, you know, really kind of take you under their wings and help you along and really apprentice with them. And I hooked up with a gentleman at Children's Fairyland in Oakland, and he took me along to shows, and I would help roadie and set up things and, you know, untangle things, whatever needed to be done. And then, you know, he taught me how to make puppets, and I'd start painting and just get the groundwork, and that's when I got really started doing it. And I went formally training. I went to school for music. I went for classical music at the University of Pacific Conservatory of Music. When I finally got out of college, I said, you know, I can make a much better living doing puppetry than I can as a musician. So I really went into that full force and, you know, formed the company of the Fratello Marionettes. And people often come up to it and comment about how we have such a diverse music in our shows. It's because we do listen to all these things. We listen to classical and rock and jazz and funk and, you know, opera and ballet and everything. It's all part of whatever this mishmash is. So that's why, you know, our shows, I think, are a little more popular, and we can present them to a wider range of audiences because they're not one little niche in the music market. Puppets is like a big umbrella of the puppetry community, and then you have like marionettes are a specific kind, or you have hand puppets, which is our janitor that we use in the beginning of our show, or rod puppets like our conductor that we use in the show, or shadow puppets or finger puppets, or bunraku, Japanese style, or lots of other different styles that we have. But I specialize in marionettes. I personally like things that challenge me on a construction level and also on a performance level, and so they're a little more time-consuming to create, and certainly a little more time-consuming to master and to learn them. Marionettes have no really true connection to them besides the strings. You know, a hand puppet, you have a finger, you have in a head, so you can actually move that and you have a direct contact with that. Or a rod puppet, you can move that rod and it moves that. But a marionette, all you have working with you is gravity, so everything just pulls down, and you're hoping that these strings do something for you in some sort of lateral upward movement. So you really don't have a direct connection with your figure, and so when you're translating your emotions and what you're trying to translate to that character, it's very different from most other types of puppetry. Truly, we kind of build our shows towards families and adults, although most of our material doesn't have anything to do with adults per se, but we're really entertaining them, and because we are put under the category of puppetry, then we are entertaining the children. So we do lots of school shows, libraries, preschools, and those sort of things. And you still have to be able to entertain them, but entertain the adults, because, you know, this is our business and we need to have them have a good time and entertain us to hire us back for next time. So we do entertain the adults, really. But really, we're just entertaining ourselves, and we're like big 3-year-olds anyway, so that's who we're entertaining. Each character takes about 2 to 3 months to make. And sometimes working with other puppeteers or other artists, we collaborate with them on different aspects of them. So sometimes we'll have friends who are artists who would design characters, and then we would actually build them ourselves. So sometimes we have people who sculpt heads for us, and we sculpt those as well, or sometimes people help costume and things, but we really do most everything ourselves. I mean, anything that we don't do ourselves, it's just because we're collaborating with other people on projects. Marionettes cannot do a lot of things well because of gravity, truly. When our show that we have with trick characters, I mean, they're designed to do very specific things, so we don't show you that they can't walk well and they can't do these other things really well, so we're just going to show you what they're supposed to do. So, like, you know, having puppet, I remember I was called to do and work on a commercial in the city, and they wanted to have marionettes on a basketball court trying to play basketball. I said, it doesn't work. You can't just have it, you know, look realistic and have it, you know, unless you're trying to make it look, you know, comical or, you know, puppety, but it's really not how it is. You know, there's lots of things puppets can't do well. Like this guy in particular, when we have to figure out things of how to make them work, and we were just going to have him juggle beer steins, and it was just going to be a juggling act. And then Fred said, well, it would be really funny if he could actually drink the beer. So then we have to figure out, well, how's he going to drink beer? How are we going to do that? And so we came up with this idea of actually having the beer as being silk scarves. And so when they kind of go inside of his head, it's very hollow inside there and very large. And it's kind of has a zigzag of space in there, so the string goes up and down and up and down. So it's very effective when it works, but you know, like trick marionettes, there's live theater and things don't work all the time, and you know, you have to just kind of smile and dance around a little bit. So when we start a new character, we always start with a character sketch for each of the figures. This is kind of gives us the style and the total look of the character when it should be done, and also kind of gives us some hints of body shapes and cuts of the fabric and how it needs to look when it's done. Then we take we make our blueprints out of these drawings here, and this is actually what we take all of our actual dimensions from. So we had this large drawing. It was actually just a small 6-inch drawing. Then we blew it up as tall as we wanted it. I think this is about 22 inches. And then we actually drew some details for all the legs, all the jointing for the feet, and then measured out the arms and all the body parts, the upper torso and the lower torso. And then we can start making all the parts. Usually we carve all the legs out of wood. They are cut on a bandsaw first, a front view and a side view, and then they're carved with a knife, and then they're sanded and sanded and sanded to be really smooth before they get painted. Same thing with the feet. They'll get carved out of wood and then sanded. And then we're kind of at the stage right now where we joint them. So this takes quite a while. We have to put these little aluminum tabs inside there to make all the joints move back and forward. And then we put stops inside there to make the puppets stop like normal puppet, or like a normal human would have stops in their ankle and in their knees up here. You can see this is the top of the knee. Then most of our bodies actually they're made out of styrofoam because our puppets are a little bit larger. We can't carve them out of wood, so we make them out of styrofoam to keep them lightweight. And then we cover them in paper mache, and then we actually coat them in shellac to protect them. So they're quite strong, but they're also really lightweight. And because they're so lightweight, we actually had to add weight to parts of them. So inside of her body here, there's a lead weight to make sure that she sits down when her trunk is moving like this. And so in this case, she has an articulated torso, so she can move back and forth when she's ice skating. And then this leg will eventually get attached to her body like this with some fabric on her hips, so it moves. And in her case, she actually has wooden arms, and her hands are here. Her hands are actually cast. They're sculpted first, and then they're cast out of material. This is a hard rubber material called neoprene, and then it'll get a joint in her wrist here so she can move her hands. And then we'll make a little joint on here, and then her head will get attached on top of here. And then we make controls to hang up all the puppets before they all get strung up. So it takes us about 3 months to make each of these characters. Fred is actually the second person that has worked with me, and my business partner wanted to move away, and so he did that. And I was gone on working on a cruise ship for about 3 months, and then when I got back, I just happened to go to Children's Fairyland in Oakland and visit some friends, and they said, oh, Fred was here. Some puppeteer just moved from Atlanta and looking for some work in the area.
I spent my career really not liking marionettes. And this has given me a completely different perspective on it, and that's been really good for just watching some shows that I really, because I'm a very story-oriented kind of person, and I really like a good story. And I like a good trick puppet, but I like it to be within the context of a story usually. And there's a big tradition in marionettes of these trick marionettes, and that's usually the whole thing. The guy will come out, he'll do his trick, and he'll leave. Now that I know what goes into building that puppet and rehearsing that puppet, I have a much greater appreciation for it. Some of the things that used to drive me crazy still drive me crazy, but I think they actually drive every marionnettist crazy as well. You know, there's certain things they have a hard time doing, and it's hard to overcome, but that's the challenge of it. And actually every style of puppetry has its strengths and weaknesses, and this one, yeah, this is a real challenge, especially as Kevin mentioned earlier, outdoors. You know, you're in the elements where if I'm holding on to the puppet, I can kind of force it to do something, but when it's just hanging at the bottom of strings and it just starts to drift away, well, you just kind of drift with it a little, or I don't know, you have to make something up.
When we practice a new piece of puppet, we first just practice on our own, just getting the feel for the character and finding out what it can do. Before we build the character, we figure out, okay, we want it to do this, this, and this. And then once after we build it, we figure out, okay, some of those things that we want it to do, they work good, some of them don't. And then you find these other things that do work really well. And so you incorporate all those things in the choreography and you kind of fit them in there. So when you're first working with it, we work in front of a big mirror. Behind this big curtain here is a big 4x8 mirror. And then we also perform in front of a video camera, so we can watch that back. And those are the real things that we watch. But because seeing it from up above, working down the strings, is a completely different perspective of an audience member. I like the construction and performing myself. And something you have to learn in this business, because it does incorporate so many different aspects of art and performance and theater, is that you really need to sit down and figure out what you're good at and what you're not good at. And what you're not good at, find people who can fill in those spots. So, you know, Fred's a much better writer and developing of story and character than, let's just do this fun, tricky thing. No, we want to have why does it have to do this? So that's definitely a good balance for having us both there.
Yeah, I like the development of a show the most. I mean, I like performing, but yeah, I don't know. There's something in between it all, in between the construction and the writing, and where it's all starting to work together in some way. And I feel like puppetry is this wonderful mix of painting and costuming and construction and lighting and script and performance, and you get to use all of these talents. And I don't feel like I'm great at any of those things, but I feel like I understand how they work together relatively well, and that's my favorite part, is like getting different elements to actually become the one thing with this puppetry.
We do this as a living, and we do make a living at it, thank God, but you know, we're certainly not going to get rich off of it, and we're not going to, you know, be able to do other things that other people would normally do in their life, but we would still be doing this if we weren't getting paid, you know, because this is what we love, and it's even better that we get to be on stage and just have people, you know, fawn over us and shower us with adorations, but really we would still be doing this if we weren't getting paid.
This is a choice we've made to try to enjoy our lives while we stay alive, you know. And if you can stay alive and do your art, then you're winning the game.
For me, the key strategic insights of Fratello Marionette's success are: first, Kevin wisely chose to pair with Fred, a skilled performer with complementary skills. Next, they continue to innovate their craft by constructing new marionettes and developing new routines. And lastly, by using diverse music, almost no spoken language, and family-friendly stories, their performances can be truly enjoyed by everyone. For the last 30 years, my next guest, Jeff Raz, has performed with circuses and theaters around the world. He is the founder and director of the Clown Conservatory, a San Francisco-based program that trains some of the top clowns in show business today.
I was 14 when I learned how to juggle, and I always mark that as an important moment. I'm not sure it was really a passion. Then, you know, it's hard to say when you're 14, there's a passion. Well, not necessarily juggling balls, if I can be clear on that. But it was the first thing I could actually do. My dad was a physicist. My brother became a biostatistician. My mother has a degree, is a PhD in sociology. My grandmother and grandfather were lawyers. smart family, and I'm a kinetic learner, so finally I found something I could do. I learned to juggle in a few minutes and could do it. The nice side effect was that girls would watch me juggle, which was news also, and when you're 14, passion, then it starts becoming more interesting. So I don't have any claims that there was like an artistic passion at that moment, but it felt good. I mean, I felt it in my body, and it was so nice to be able to do something, especially something my big brother couldn't do. That's important. In the 70s, in the Bay Area, there was just this real explosion of arts, especially circus arts and theater, dance. So 1974 becomes a seminal year where Dell'Arte Company starts, really coagulates. The Pickles start, Make a Circus comes here from England, really exploding of arts here. And so as I start watching the shows, I go to see Bill Irwin and Jeff Hoyle. I go see Don Forrest and Joan Shirley and Michael Fields, and at Dell'Arte start to get excited about these things. And then there were little places you could take workshops. So I could come and take a workshop with Larry Pizzoni and learn some of the circus skills. When they did Three High, that's they being Jeff Hoyle, Larry Pizzoni, and Bill Irwin, all of a sudden they went into a theater with circus skills, and we were going, "Ooh, interesting." And then Bill does Regard of Flight, which was this totally different meld of circus, clowning in particular, music, and theater. And it was brilliant. It made him famous in New York, and we lost him. We didn't lose him. I saw him a few months ago, but he moved from here. But that really left us a real ambition then. Oh man, is my work cutting the way that work's cutting? And that then so when you get that artistic ambition, then it starts to set in. In 1978, I got invited to join the top juggling group here, the Bay City Reds. The Flying Karamazov brothers were the number 2. They were coming up.
The nose is not 100% right, but it's close enough to play with. And I bet Paoli or Peggy will know it's close. Your face can take it big like that. You know, it might just be that it needs to be horizontal a little more. Yeah, just a little bit. But I like the mustache.
That's kind of fun, huh?
Yeah.
Especially if I go like this.
Gewalt.
My business now is mainly the Clown Conservatory at Circus Center. Started in 2000, and it was not my idea. I get credit for it a lot because I run it, but the then executive director at Circus Center, was writing a grant to the National Endowment for the Arts, and he thought that starting a clown school would be a good idea. He called me. I said, I don't think it's a good idea. Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Clown College had closed in '97. I taught there the last few years. I didn't think it was a great idea to close it. But it was what was, and I wasn't sure there was this real need for clown training. I learned catch as catch can. Clowns traditionally have learned by being there with other clowns, which I happen to think is still a fabulous way to learn. But I said I would write the artist, and we got this grant. We got $20,000 from the National Endowment for the Arts. I still didn't start the school. I said, let's do some workshops. Test market. I just don't know. I don't know if there's enough jobs out there, and I don't know if there's enough people interested. But people really flocked to these workshops. We packed them out. A guy flew in from South Africa for one of them, which kind of rang a bell in my head. So then we started a small 10 hours a week for a 6-month training period to get started. And I learned from one of my students, who's a professor, about how to write a syllabus. I really didn't know these things. I attended a physical theater conservatory and learned on my own. And so over the years, I've really learned how to build a school with a lot of help from Dell'Arte School, our sister school. So we build the infrastructure. Now we have 18 hours a week of classes. We have very structured homework situation. They write reports, and we are trying to find, in a conservatory setting, what that means for clowns. Clowns are very idiosyncratic. A lot of people think you can't train clowns. We're the only one in the country.
The theme of the week is simplicity. And I purposely put that in knowing that we will want it to be complexity. That's what we'll have. But for good clowning, we got to get down to simplicity. On Sunday shows in Alameda, John Gilkey came at the last minute and he was trying a new intro to a very old piece. And in the first show he had a little stool with 3 balls on it and a little another to this and a microphone and his coat rack and everything. And he worked out a whole thing with the clowns who were doing the transitions. And it worked okay. For the second show, stool's gone, balls are in the pockets, simplify the transition. That's how we work. We go from more to less, more to less, more to less. So just keep that in mind. We do go from more to less, but most of the notes I'll give you are probably, let's see what less is.
A lot of people think you can't train clowns, which is not true. But don't tell anybody, please. You can't train idiosyncraticness. You can't make somebody more interesting than they are. But you can teach the stylizations, the framework, the craft that lets that live large. You can teach that. You can also allow that creativity to open up. Yo-Yo Ma, who's one of the great creative artists and musician, you think about him, you can't make a Yo-Yo Ma. It's coming out of him, you see it in his face, you hear it in that music, you see how he wraps around that cello. But he had to do scales like everybody else.
Try to stay up here. So it's here. And then, other arm. And then the logic is, I'll hold this down. Right? There's a logic build here. Okay. I know where this is going to go, so I'll... Oh, geez. Okay? Right? Humanist machine, but you have to follow that logic. So I think if you do this straight up, not try to get fancy with it, the fun is when he sits up, he's got that little look to us. So now we know he's playing games. So now we got the wonderful thing where he's the number 2. You're very sincerely trying to help him out, and he's messing with you.
I still work independently. So I perform with Cirque du Soleil from time to time. So I get to be in the big arena. I also perform in little things, and I direct shows, I write shows, and it keeps me flowing, keeps me fresh, so I don't you can get a little sour in the classroom. The Clown Conservatory has now 101 graduates, like the Dalmatians. This is a good year for that. And we have a range of students from 18 years old to 50. We have people more and more from theater programs. They already have a degree in theater. They took a clown class. They saw a particular circus or clown, and I got to do that. Sometimes from dance programs. We had a student who was on Stomp, and she came back for training, went back and worked with Stomp. And then we have some who have circus training. They've worked with Circus Smirkus or different youth circus, maybe done some street performing, and are finding that the skills aren't getting them where they want to go alone, and because we also teach a lot of skills. So we have that. We sometimes take students who have no circus, no theater, no performance training. Because clowning is idiosyncratic, we can take a student who don't know where they're going to fit, but they got a little something going here. Let's go. And we've had some students do very well who come in without much training. You do have to get the training. One way or the other, you got to get it, because you can't work as a professional clown without a lot of skill and a lot of training. Students are constantly getting work. They work locally. We have lots of shows here. And students are going off. They'll go to Germany to work in the German cabaret. They'll go to Cirque du Soleil. They'll work with different people. They'll work at Cirque Elwaz. Some of our students help create one of their big shows, and then come back and tell everybody, oh, this is what that's like. That cross-pollination is wonderful. The fact that we have here at Circus Center lots of studio classes. You can just take the class. It's an a la carte. Any level. We have pros coming back for a little training. We have people who've never done it come in. When I first started the Clown Conservatory, I tried to think of how I actually learned and how my career actually went, rather than just repeating what I got from my teachers. And that a lot of teachers do this. It's a very important process. It's hard. And one of the things I thought about was how being on the road got old. Every night you're making community, you hope, with the audience, and then they go out into the streets, into the cafes and the restaurants, and you go back to the hotel and watch HBO. And I talked about this when I was with the Pickles, with Diane Wozniak, my partner of many years, performing partner for many years. And so for us, having some community to relate to was crucial. So I always, from the very beginning, included a clowning and community section. Luckily, in the decades since we started, an actual professional form called social circus has really grown up. So you have Cirque du Soleil, Cirque du Monde, you have Clowns Without Borders, you have the Clown Care Unit out of the Big Apple Circus, which has been around for nearly 3 decades. They're all doing the same thing. They're saying, how do we take these wonderful circus skills that are based on connection and making a group of people feel more than they have felt? Whether it's laughing together or going, oh, when you see the acrobats, or just feeling the teamwork of a company. How do we use that in settings other than the ring and the stage? If money were no object, I do love training clowns, and I think I would continue that. I also love making shows, and making shows is expensive and risky. And so I would make more shows and experiment more. I also, arts education is very important to me, and the lack of it in California I find criminal. And I have 2 children, and so it's more criminal to me. So I would spend more time looking at how professional artists, teaching artists, teachers, students, parents, businesses, all make a circle and a cycle that helps everybody. I do a benefit every year with my wife. The professional artists who volunteer their time always thank me at the end and say, you're going to bring me back, right? You're going to bring me back to work your butt off for free. Yes, I think I managed that. Of course, the students get the arts programming, they get the show. So there's not a zero-sum here at all. And it's bringing arts to the center of community, which in America, since we started, has been patchy at best. We haven't got that idea that culture and art can make life better if it's right in the middle there. And it's not art or money. It's not right. Artists can deal with money. We do it all the time. We're not the flaky artists. That's an old idea. We know how to make the most of every single dollar. We haven't seen that many.
I see the key strategic insights of Jeff Raz's success as, first, through serendipity, he was at the center of circus innovation and worked to hone his craft. Next, by first test marketing a clown school, he was able to gauge potential interest. And lastly, he not only shares his wealth of knowledge, but he continues to keep himself fresh by regularly writing, performing, and directing. Today's entertaining guests have spent years to become overnight successes and continue to evolve their skills and offerings. I hope that this episode has given you many good ideas for increasing your business with passion.